What's up, guys? Welcome to your team meeting. And we have a special guest giving a message today. We've got Lindley giving a message today on cooking rapport and the art of cooking rapport, why it matters so much, how you can do it, where you can put it, why it really helps your demo, why it's going to help you create some sales and success, and why it really matters. So Lindley, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you and go ahead and take it away.
You let me screen share?
Sure. Here you go. You are now also co-host as well.
So this is going to be a quick talk for you guys. Most of you know how to do cooking rapport, but especially with the summer rolling around, I want to do some review and maybe some tips that you don't already know. And then I also have like tiny little tips on rapport after. How do I move you guys? There we go. So this is basically how I have my notebook set up, is through the who makes the most food to down to difficult. I have that beginning of every demo, like before the demo, I write HALILO 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 4 to 7. So it's super easy when I ask Mr. and Mrs. Jones these questions. I just circle. For those of you who don't know what cooking rapport is, it's basically getting to know Mr. and Mrs. Jones and their cooking needs. Also helps bring down some walls, helps you get to know their hot buttons when it comes to cooking. And it really, in my experience, makes them feel super duper heard. Like at the end of every demo, whenever they're giving me feedback, which I ask for, all of them are always like, oh my gosh, like you really listened to our needs. Like, thank you so much. And I don't know that unless I ask cooking rapport. So the first thing I ask, just so I know who I'm talking to, I ask who makes the most food. I'll make a joke out of it. I'll say, oh, okay, is it like 50-50, 75-25? Is it like 97-3? They'll start laughing and they'll be like, they'll give me a number. So at least I'll know more or less who does the cooking. Then whoever does most of the cooking, I'll ask if they cook because they have to, like to, or love to. And along the same lines, I'll ask if they typically make food 1 to 3 times a week, 3 to 5 times a week, 4 to 7 times a week. The reason I have it lined up in little columns like this is just for my brain. If I've circled like have to and 1 to 3 times, I'm thinking homemaker. If I circle like to and 3 to 5 times, whatever their answers are, I'm thinking Siggy, and love and 4 to 7, I'm thinking complete set. So that's just sort of like my visual. If it's a mix, I'll just go higher up because, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Jones are just going to be happy with more Cutco. So that's what I'm thinking there. I make sure to get their favorite veggies, fruits, and meats for multiple reasons. One, that way you'll know if there are any specialty pieces in particular, if they choose like a homemaker and they have to a la carte, what specialty pieces to help out. But the whole point of this, a really helpful way to do this, is to get them to say yes to all of the pieces before you even show them. So if you ask Mr. and Mrs. Jones, do you sometimes ever once in a while cut up a tomato? They'll be like, oh my God, it's the worst. Then when you go to the trimmer, there's no way they're going to be like, oh, I wouldn't use the trimmer. Yes, you would, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. You told me you cut up a tomato. Everything like that. And you basically do that for every single piece that you have, and at least the basic tools in the basic set, and then also these specialty pieces. So you do that for veggies, fruits, and meats all separately. Then I like to ask what their go-to meal is, because again, when people do more of something, they're going to spend more to do it. So we'll make sure to get them the specialty pieces for whatever their go-to meals are. And then if there's anything in particular that's difficult for them to cut or tricky to cut, or that they just don't like cutting, I'll jot that down as well. If they say nothing, I will either say, oh, okay, like I'll just jot down like knife ninja or something like that. And then they'll start laughing because obviously they're not. Or I will rattle off things that other customers have said to me, whether that be mangoes, boneless meat, or raw meat, whatever it might be for difficult. Down here, I have just some little bullet points that I've sort of sprinkled throughout. But again, whenever you're asking for veggies, fruits, meats, say like, do you sometimes ever once in a while? Because if you say, oh, do you cut turkey? More often than not, they're going to say no. Like in their mind, they're going to be like, okay, once or twice a year, but like not really. But if you say, do you sometimes ever once in a while carve up a turkey? They'll be like, yeah, like once in a while, a couple times a year. And then you'll get a yes, and you want them in that yes mindset. Which is actually the second bullet point. Like I said, get them to say yes to every piece that you know. If they say, oh, we do all veggies, we do all fruits, you don't want them to do that. You want them to be thinking about specific foods that they prepare. So if they say that, be like, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, like, let's play a game. Like, I'm going to rattle off every fruit and veggie I can think of. If there's one that I name that you don't do, let me know. And that way you can jot down all of the pieces that they use. And I typically do this. I know when I was originally taught, we were taught to do this at the beginning of the presentation. I really, really recommend doing this after the testimonial video. So that way, after you've talked to them about the features and benefits and the junk knives, you give them a break where it's super duper interactive in the middle of the presentation. So after that, like testimonial video at the fair, right before the basic pieces. So that's where I do it. In regards to regular rapport, like I guess emotional or like whatever that name of rapport is, just 5 quick tips on it to either refresh you on rapport or not. First is to always be more interested than interesting. Mr. and Mrs. Jones obviously do want to get to know who they are, but everyone loves talking about themselves. So get them to talk about themselves, ask questions, be more interested in them than focused on being an interesting person. The second thing, take notes on the rapport that you have at the beginning. That way, if they say like, oh yeah, my son's like on a I was about to say hockey team. Their son's on a hockey team at the end when you're asking for Rex. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, what parents on your son's hockey team do you think might be nice enough to sit down and listen, or whatever, however you phrase it. That way you can use it as ammo for then. Number 3, a really, really easy way to build rapport with a couple is just to ask them how they met. Ask them if it was love at first sight or what the first date was like, different things like that. Get them in a really positive mood. I've heard really cute stories. So it's a really great way to like bring walls down and make it a lot more friendly, like comrade environment. 4, match and mirror their energy. So if I were on call with someone who is a bit lower energy, I would still make sure to be slightly higher than them. But again, mellow out, which I actually do know how to do, even if I'm not doing it right now. And then 5, thank you, Jacob, for laughing. 5, be funny throughout. The only reason that you pay attention in class or when people lecture or when someone's talking to you is if they're funny and if they're engaging. I've had some professors and listened to presentations of people who know their stuff, but it's absolutely boring because they just are not funny. So make little jokes. It's a way to continue to make it not super duper professional and more of a conversation. So yeah, that's what I would say. And I can throw the PDF in the chat, but that's just a little review for you all.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's give Lindley some snaps. Woo, woo, woo. Fired up. Let's get 2 or 3 takeaways. I'd love to hear some takeaways from what you've learned from Lindley and what you want to start implementing into your demo. Let's start off with Mr. Trejo.
Okay, this one I haven't heard before. I really liked it. It was where when you're doing the cooking rapport, which I do, and you're trying to get them to name the foods that they are making on a weekly basis, but they're like, oh, there's so many, I don't want to list them all. I can't. Lindley's game of like, oh, let me list the foods, and whichever ones you don't make, let me know. That way they don't have to kind of struggle to think of them, and they have to put that energy into it. It's a lot more fun, and you still get what you need to accommodate to what they make. I think that's a great solution. I never thought of it, thinking backwards. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And thank you for sharing that, Lindley. And thank you for noticing that, Evan, because if we think about it, like they're probably like maybe mentally exhausted at that point because they've had work or they've had their kids, driving them nuts. So that it's like as simple as you can make it, the simpler, the better. And everyone makes food, right? So it's like, just give them the different ideas of like, do you do this, and then they'll give you an answer. So fantastic. That's a good one. I see Mr. Bowman. You are up next. Share your takeaway. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, kind of going off of that. Do you sometimes ever once in a while? That's a great line. You got to say that to give them ammunition to use against. I really like what Lindley was saying about bringing up the foods that they already said that they cut when you present what they're cutting, to be like, yeah, you've already told me you cut this. So getting the yeses before. And then also sales is listening. So like listening to what they're saying and then using that back to them. But like it should be more interested than interesting. So sales is a lot of just listening.
John's dropping all the nuggets. Great takeaway, John. And of course, I want to recognize that. Guys, you are like a personal shopper. So it's like, if you can just help them understand that they make foods and you can get a yes per piece. You ever sometimes once in a while cut turkey? Yeah, great. Then they see themselves using the master carving set. But if you don't do that, by the way, then they're like, oh, we don't use that much. I don't need a need for that. And then they think they can get by without it. And that's no bueno. So great takeaway. Always ask that. You want to ask simple yes questions. Like I remember asking on my demo, do you ever cut tomatoes? Like that's a simple yes question. They're like, yeah, of course, Jacob. Okay, great. You're gonna use the trimmer for cutting all your tomatoes. It's also great for blank, blank, and blank. So great takeaways. Any last takeaways that anyone wanted to share, or questions or comments or thoughts before we go ahead and wrap this part up?
Evan had a hand up.
I have a question.
No, Evan.
Thinking to my takeaway, Lindley, how do you jot down what they make if you have that huge list and they just know what they don't make?
Oh, smart. I do like short things for every veggie and fruit. So strawberry, sweet potato, what else is there? Grapes, citrus. If I'm doing veggies, Brussels sprouts, that's my favorite. Asparagus, like I just super duper shorthand write that out. Like I have, I guess, like a dictionary in my head where I can see, like, I don't know, like
Okay.
summer sausage or something like that, and just like have that in your brain.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Because handwriting, I'm like, how do we write down every single
Yeah.
food?
Work, but super easy.
Make them little acronyms. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Make a little system for yourself. Awesome. Great takeaway to the takeaway. Making a simple system. So nice. But cool. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording here. Thanks for the message, Lindley, and thanks for reminding us of one of the most important things to do, which is build cooking rapport. And if you're watching this recording, start doing this because it's going to take your sales game to a whole new level.